multi-level corruption that you were looking at. So while you were in the World Bank and you're seeing this multi-level corruption going on, did anybody offer you a hand in the Ponzi scheme?
Well, it's only relatively recently that people have started offering me anything. And every time that happens, it's not that I'm uncorruptible. It's that I have a big mouth. And so they'll offer me something that, sort of looks attractive. But before I know it, I'm telling somebody else about the fact that I've been offered this incredible bribe. And so it just doesn't work.
Right. Well,
and you have to also recognize what happened to the presidents that didn't want this Federal Reserve system to go forward. Let me explain how it works, okay? If you have the Treasury Department that's issuing the currency, then you don't have to pay interest on it. But if you have the Treasury Department issue a promissory note to the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve then issues the currency, then this note that the Treasury Department issued, there's interest on it. And that's how the debt every year gets bigger and bigger, because we're going to be spending more money than we're taking in. And let me tell you how the tax payments work.
Okay.
This I couldn't believe in the beginning, but it's absolutely true. When you fill out your taxes and you send a check one place and you send the tax form another place, the check that you send goes directly to the Federal Reserve, and they take that check and they send it to the United Kingdom, and the UK keeps, not the government, the UK banksters keep 40%, and then they send 60% on to the Jesuits in the Vatican. That's what's happening to our tax dollars.
Wow.
Now, how are we financing our government? We're selling drugs. We're selling the drugs that we grow in Afghanistan. We never had any poppies there until the war in Afghanistan. You think with all the satellites flying over, they couldn't see where the poppy fields are? No, that's how we earn our money.
Wow.
How does that grab you? Is that a good arrangement?
Wow.
No, it's not a good arrangement.
So are you basically saying that the money that's being fed into the IRS ends up at the Vatican?
60% of it, except for the 40% cut that goes to the United Kingdom. Now, let me tell you how that happened. That happened because in 1200, the King of England borrowed a lot of money from the Vatican because of wars and signed a treaty that he would agree to keep repaying the money to the Vatican. And of course, he never caught up. So he was in trouble. And then, do you remember when our Capitol building was burned down in 1812 by the UK?
Right.
Yeah, okay. We have been having to pay war reparations to the United Kingdom all these years, and nobody has bothered to tell the people about it. And Lincoln, when he was financing the Civil War, issued greenbacks directly without involving the bankers. Mm-hmm. That's why he was rubbed out. And JFK, he had a memo that he was going to sign where he was going to just erase this compounding of interest on the U.S. debt. He was going to have our currency issued directly by the Treasury Department. He was assassinated 11 days after he signed that memo. So these banksters are bound and determined to keep us, what can I say, imprisoned in debt. Except that it's not working, because what we've done is we've alerted all the countries of the world. I have written to the ambassadors of all these countries many, many times. I've written to, in Washington and in New York, I wrote them a letter a couple of months ago where I was telling them about the fact that their ambassadors were all being blackmailed when they tried to fire Paul Wolfowitz. So the whole world is laughing at the fact that the American public is totally in the dark and duped by their media that refuse to tell them what's really happening.
Now, I certainly want you to elaborate a little bit more on a specific point that you just made, and I took you back to it a second ago, and that's the fact that our tax dollars, you're saying 60% of our tax dollars get cut to the Vatican and the Jesuits. And I think for a lot of people out there, that's a pretty astounding revelation, because, you think of the Jesuits, we have Pope Francis now, whom our president praises, and he's the very first Jesuit pope. And some people, when they think of the Jesuits, they think of an order of meek and humble men and all of these things. Why would the Vatican and the Jesuits be, caught up in such a stink like this? what in your perception, and what is their worldview? Are they a bunch of megalomaniacs? Are they just trying to amass a stupendous amount of wealth? What do you perceive in this whole situation for the Jesuits in the Vatican?
I'm so sorry to have to tell you. First of all, let me start out by saying that this has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the Catholic faith. Mm-hmm. This has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the people of faith that are not aware of this.
That's right.
And I have to tell you that there are, unfortunately, people who will mock the faith, and they will put on the priest's garb just so that they can hide their crimes. These are criminals. These are not Catholics.
Wow.
And unfortunately, there are many of them at the very top. It's rot at the top.
Wow.
And that's the way it is, and it's been documented. And I've been working with people who have documented this. It's been going on for a very, very long time. You can read what our founding fathers had to say about the Jesuits. After Lincoln was assassinated, the Jesuits were not allowed certain things, certain privileges in the United States. And that ban on the Jesuits was lifted by Ronald Reagan, unfortunately.
It's very interesting that you said that, because I do have some knowledge of this. I just wanted to hear what you had to say on the issue. But all throughout the 1600s, the Jesuits were actually put out of all of the nations in Europe because the monarchs there realized that they were the ones responsible for fomenting these revolutions within their countries. And Ronald Reagan, interestingly, was the first one to appoint an ambassador to the Vatican for the United States of America. And we know that Pope John Paul II and Reagan worked very closely together for the bringing down of the USSR. And so, very interesting. Anyway, please proceed.
Well, I think let me switch to where we're working together, what we have achieved.
Right.
And people are going to be surprised. But first, actually, let me tell you a little bit about what goes on with the birth certificates of your children. If you look at them, their names are all in capital letters. This is because when a baby is born and gets a Social Security number, what the bankers are doing is they're estimating the amount of taxes that child is going to generate through their lifetime as a taxpayer. And they issue a bond on the capital markets in the name of that baby. And then, this sounds improbable, but again, I'm telling you, sometimes truth is stranger than fiction.
That's right.
So when you're married and you go before a justice of the peace, your marriage license is also in all caps. It's as if two ships had met in the night.
Maritime
You're not
law.
really married.
Maritime law.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And this huge scheme has been bilking the American citizens out of their wealth, but also out of their status as citizens with a constitution.
I just have to say this once again for everybody that's watching. This is Karen Hughes, the former senior counselor for the World Bank, 20 years in the World Bank. She's not some raving lunatic. This is a well-educated individual at the Ivy League school, Yale. I think we need to listen. Go ahead, my sister.
Well, the United States is not the only country that has been, what can I say, put in this terrible situation. It's called state capture.
Yes.
But it's not hopeless. As a matter of fact, we're winning. We're taking our republic back. And the way that we are doing this is, it's just beautiful. It's more beautiful than you can ever imagine. There are people who have devoted their entire lives to going around from state to state and alerting people to this problem. And we have in our Constitution Article 5, which says that when state legislatures ask for a constitutional convention, the Congress is required to call a constitutional convention. So by 1929, Wisconsin was the 35th state to request a constitutional convention and wrote a scathing letter when the constitutional convention was not called. By now, we now have 49 of 50 state legislatures that have called for a constitutional convention. This convention should happen yesterday, and we can take back our republic.
Wow.
It's all there for us. We don't have to do anything other than demand our rights.
Now, what about this mega conglomerate? Are they going to just allow this to happen? Do they have their cards on the table to try to make sure that they continue to operate business as usual?
Well, remember when I was talking about Toto pulling the curtain back?
Right.
People are now looking at them and seeing what they're doing. So I'll tell you what happened last week. Two things. One is that all of the Congress was told to get on 4 airplanes, military aircraft, and fly to Florida for the funeral of one of the members of Congress. And I've been working together with a group of people that call themselves Able Danger. That's named after an agent that was working to try to prevent false flags. And anyway, so we warned Congress that if they got on those aircraft, one of two things could happen. It could be diverted to a prison. It could be diverted to Guantanamo Bay, or it could crash those military aircraft. And we advised them not to go. And as a result, only 30 Congress people did go. So, we're working the problem. And
Karen, why doesn't any intelligence agency get neck deep into this thing, like the CIA?
They are part of the problem.
Now, when you say they're part of the problem, expound on that a little bit.
When the CIA was set up, it was set up with a special job to guard the world's gold. There's a lot more gold than people know about 3 or 4 times what people are officially told.
Right.
And a lot of this gold is on deposit all over the world. There's 170,000 tons in the Bank of Hawaii. That's more than people say is in existence on Earth already. Yeah?
Right.
And the CIA was set up to guard that gold.
Wow.
It wasn't even supposed to be for the United States alone. It was supposed to be for that special purpose. But they lost their way, the CIA.
Well, at least why doesn't the CIA at least spank the Jesuits on their hands? What's the situation with that?
Because the Jesuits are in charge of the CIA.
Wow, that's a big revelation there. Wow, you've said so much. I'm going to continue on this line because you made mention of Lincoln and him actually moving in the right direction for our country, issuing greenbacks, and because of that, he ended up in a casket. Then you have JFK, and he was trying to move our nation back in the right direction as well. Interesting enough, first Catholic president, and he ended up body bagged. So what about all of their successors, if I can say it that way? Is it that the presidents thereafter fell in line? Is Obama falling in line? Let's just get right to the punch. Is Obama falling in line with the whole agenda, or is he pushing at it anyway? What's your take on that?
Unfortunately, he's not in a position. His wife is being blackmailed.
How so?
Because she has fallen for some what they call honey traps.
Wow.
In a hotel with 2-way mirrors, she has been compromised.
I know what a honey trap is. Wow.
And there are other things involving him. His mother was a CIA agent, and he was raised. In a way that made him a person who would trap people with honey traps. That was his mother's job in the CIA, to entrap people in hotels.
Wow. That was a huge bomb.
I have one that's even worse.
I'm listening.
Okay. A couple of weeks ago, I believe it was the 8th of October, there was supposed to be a nuclear bomb detonated on South Carolina. And 2 Army generals made sure that bomb went off the coast, 600 miles off the coast, and detonated undersea. And those military officers were fired. And now, at this point, there are about 180 generals and brass that are being fired in these are the people that are protecting the citizens of the United States. And that's why they're being removed.
This is more than astounding. So, so Obama, he's not really pushing against the situation because, like you just said, Michelle Obama is being blackmailed as a result of falling into one of the honey traps, and we know what those are. So evidently he is familiar with what's going on. So would you then, in essence, be saying that Obama is playing into the hands of the Jesuits at this time?
Yes.
Wow. So when Obama comes forward, because I just watched this recent interview that he did with one of the major news networks, and he had so many wonderful things to say about Pope Francis, which we know is a Jesuit. Do you think his rhetoric in this direction has anything to do with this blackmail situation and him just really being a good boy?
I can tell you that Pope Francis doesn't go into his papal apartments because Pope Benedict Ratzinger was removed because of child trafficking and financial crimes. He was removed from the papacy. So this is a very precarious situation
and this was
for the Vatican right now.
So this was a strategic move, the changing of the popes. This was a strategic move for the Vatican at this point.
They had no choice.
Right. Amazing, amazing. Once again, I'm just amazed at all that you have had to share with us right now. And it's evident that the information that you've been sharing with us right now is not something that media would want being divulged to the American public. I would think that if most people knew this was going on, there would be a huge outrage.
Yes. Why should all of their tax dollars go to the Vatican? Of course.
Wow. I don't know if you know this. I'm a Christian, okay? And what I find so profound about that statement is that, I don't know if you know this, but in the book of Revelation chapter 18, it makes mention of the Vatican under a prophetic symbol of a harlot, because a woman in the Bible is a symbol of the church, and a harlot is a corrupt church, if you will. It makes note of the Vatican there as an entity which all the merchants of the world give their goods to her. And what you're saying to us, whether you know it or not, is actually a very secular revelation of something that is theologically spoken of in the Bible. And I mean, it might be a shocker to you, but it's true.
No. I'm sure we're working on all kinds of levels.
Aaron, pretty amazing. So we can't trust corporate media. Corporate media is controlled. Is that what you're saying? End the story?
Absolutely, because if corporate media was doing its job, do you think it would have taken this many years for you to hear about what's going on? When I've been busy with other whistleblowers since 2007 on this?
If corporate media
You
was
should have
doing its
known
job,
about this so that the leadership continued.
if corporate media was doing its job, everybody in the United States of America and across the world would already know your name.
That's right. And everybody else's name too.
That's right. And wow, we just need to really be informed at this point, huh? I really appreciate your time. This has been pretty awesome.